many of you are part of that session, but if not, please start coming to the workshop sessions at 4 o'clock if you can.
This was an awesome session. Thank you for arranging this, Pam.
Super. Let's just give ourselves one more minute to gather and then.
Ready.
Super. What's your logo on the shirt, Mike?
Oh, Vanguard. Santa Clara.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, let's get started. I'm looking forward to tonight.
All right. Well, first of all, I have to really thank William, my good buddy. We talk about various things. William, you are on, aren't you? I see your name there.
I am, bro.
Oh, there you go. Okay. And we talk about the product market fit, the product itself. Last week was on the product. This week we're gonna talk about a customer focus. So we wanted to find somebody who has really good experience in actually taking a business from nothing and building a solid customer base, and building the business through partnerships, attracting customers, and just establishing a presence in the market. And William's done that twice already. William has a very interesting background. He actually started, if you just looked at his LinkedIn profile, he studied classical music at Vanderbilt University, then spent some time at Cornell, studying nanotechnology, mathematics in Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University. That's not the one in Tuscaloosa, is it, William? Because I'm an LSU.
It isn't, but I rep Roll Tide.
All right. Studied at Oakwood University in General Studies, Industrial Systems Engineering at Georgia Institute of Technology, and then he decided to study business and investment management at Wharton. His first venture was, you're gonna have to explain it, William, a fintech call center, in training and developing in that out of, I think he said, Philippines. And now you're founder and president of Bay Street Capital Holdings, which is an investment company which really focuses on managing pension fund portfolios, individual portfolios as well. But William is focusing on the big stuff to grow Bay Street. So that's what I see. William, can you sort of elaborate on that and talk about your background a little bit, and then we'll get into how you built these companies from nothing, and you're with particular attention on the customer.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Mike, for inviting me, and for everyone who's on. I hope that I can give some guidance and some tidbits that everyone can take with them. So I'm from Alabama. I grew up in a small place. Where I'm from, I had never heard of terms like venture capital or private equity. I went to school at Georgia Tech initially, and I read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek when I was a sophomore. And at the time, the idea of working 4 hours a week really appealed to me. And so I settled on call centers, and I saw an arbitrage opportunity there where at the time in the Philippines, you could hire someone that was very skilled for $200, $300 a month. And if you trained them appropriately, in the US, people would pay $3,000 a month, $3,500 a month per telemarketer. And, I was in Atlanta at the time. Bell South was going through, AT&T was acquiring them. And so this idea of going to a lot of small call centers and then rolling them up under a larger call center where I could then come to the US, put together multi-year contracts with insurance companies at a price point that was really competitive, it was just kind of my focus, I will say. In terms of pivoting, a lot of my work was with the federal government. So we made phone calls primarily for New York Life, and the main customer was the federal government. We were calling something called the Thrift Savings Plan. It's a $650 billion retirement plan, just to keep it super simple. And we would send New York Life employees into the CDCs, the VA hospitals, to meet with federal employees and discuss the options that they had for their benefits. And I came to find out that there were no diverse managers, people of color or women-owned fund managers that were receiving compensation for that $650 billion. And when I asked why, the answer that I was given was that, well, there are these things called investment advisors, and the investment advisor's responsibility is to provide recommendations to Office of Personnel Management, which is basically like HR. And Office of Personnel Management takes the recommendation of the investment advisor. So if they didn't recommend any diverse firms or women-owned firms, they just don't have any. That's the role of the investment advisor. And so I said, well, how many investment advisors are there? There's $61 trillion in the US. Of those $61 trillion, people of color plus women-owned firms don't have 3% of those assets. So it's a very small number of firms that are actually serving the institution. So I decided that I would look to address that, and started Bay Street Capital with the goal of advocating for diverse and emerging fund managers and entrepreneurs. So goal is to really inspire the next generation of people of color that are looking to be in the institutional asset management space, and entrepreneurs that are looking for the opportunity to reach their full potential, since it's really an investment vacuum out there for people of color and women as it pertains to funds being allocated to them for their businesses.
So you pretty much went through some of the key points that we bring to our startups in terms of problem solution, and I know that fund that you created has been quite successful. It's made a lot of money for a lot of people. But I'm going to backtrack. How did you promote and how did you attract the partnerships and the customers to help build your business? Because we know you didn't do it by yourself. We know you had to make the proper connections, to get, first of all, to convince everybody that there was a problem there, that you were the solution in terms of diversification and the whole issue of people of color. It was a problem. How did you convince people that you were the solution? And then how do you continue to do that as you build the business of Bay Street?
Sure. So along the way, I had a lot of mentors. And one thing that I've learned over time is that relationships don't have to be permanent in order to be successful. And that might seem kind of weird, but a lot of mentors that I had early on, I don't necessarily continue to go to them as like a current day mentor. There's a certain thing that they had and a certain partnership that made sense at that time. And what I learned while developing relationships with people who did have something of value that we could walk on the same path for some period of time was the importance of having a very specific and a very, we'll say, unique ask when reaching out to someone who I didn't know. So for example, I used to really respect and admire Jeff Bezos. I don't so much anymore for a couple of reasons, but back when I was younger, I really did. And I invested a lot in his company as an individual investor. And before Amazon Web Services was a thing, I was following the company. They announced AWS, and I thought that I could add value with the business that I had and with my relationships in the HBCU community. HBCU is historically Black colleges and universities. And I happen to be well connected in that space. And I felt that AWS could gain market share quickly if they had someone in that space who understood how the product worked, kind of to Mike's point on diversity, there are not that many, people of color that are working at AWS, for example. And so I emailed Jeff directly. I actually found his email a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago on Quora. I was, doing my thing on Quora. His email is jeff@amazon.com if anybody wants to email him. And I wrote a manifesto. It was a very long email, but very specific in terms of, hey, Jeff, here's AWS. Here's how I think you can expand it in this particular market. This is why I think I should be the person to do it. Here are some quotes that you've made along the way that I follow. The reason why you should consider me to do this. And I put an email tracker on that email to see if he even would open the email. And the email was opened 150 times on the same day, all across the US. So he had like multiple people, I guess, that check his email and follow up with him on what he's going to pursue, what he wasn't going to pursue. This is at least 4 years ago, at least probably 5 years ago when I sent this email. And they called the same day. They flew me to the new AWS headquarters. And I was speaking with the team, and I started to have these one-on-one interview sessions. And the only other Black guy that worked there, in confidence, he said, "Hey, Will, they're not gonna let you do this. What you're talking about is a really big threat to a lot of the people's job security here, and the way that they work. This is really one of those like get in line sort of deal. Not a lot of people have approached with this sort of thing that's outside of the organization." So he kind of prepared me for the no that I was eventually to receive. But what I took away from that, and what I continue to apply in my business, is if there's someone that I want to connect with, regardless of who they are, regardless of how successful they are, it could be any. It's not always like reach out to the most successful person you can think of. It's more if I have a very specific ask, and there's a reason for the connection, there's something of value that I can provide, oftentimes you'll end up connecting to the right people. You're not going to connect to everyone, but you'll connect to the right people. And I kind of look at it like a checkers game where, you can move piece by piece. You can be very deliberate in the decisions that you're making. And eventually, as you build that group of advocates that are advocating for you, they king you, and you can move freely across the board because you have a network of folks that are advocating for you. And that's how I try to grow my business. That's the way that I try to help other people of color, other women founders, other business owners that are looking to do the same.
So, it's you got a lot of no's. How do you deal with all the no's? Because we always tell our founders, expect a lot of no's, thousands of no's. When you look for money or customers and everything, how do you handle that?
It's law of averages. My first job was door-to-door sales. So almost everybody tells you no.
Yeah.
The very first door I knocked on, it was in Atlanta. I was trying to decide what I was going to do with my life. And I knocked on the door, and this old lady answered the door. And she said, before I even got out my pitch, I was gonna, I'd been practicing my pitch for who knows, like that night, and I said, and I opened my mouth like that, and she said, "Young man, what are you doing at my door?" And I was about to explain what I was doing there, and she said, "Where did you go wrong in your life to where you showed up on my doorstep this morning?" And it hurt my feelings so bad. Just so a little context, my mom was vice president at a university. So for someone to say, that her first son had gone so wrong that he was doing this door-to-door job, like it hit me deep, you know what I mean? And so I started crying right there in front of her. And I was like, "I'm sorry, you're right. I don't know where I went wrong," like that, right? Right. And so I kind of like walked away in shame. And I sat down on her driveway, and I had this moment where the question was, are you going to go knock on the next door and give your pitch, or are you going to go home and switch jobs, quit? You see what I mean? And mind you, this is my first job. I'd never worked anywhere before outside of like cutting people's grass. You see what I mean? And selling stuff on eBay when that was a thing. That's a whole other story I can tell you about. And so I decided, I got up and I knocked back on her door again. And she came back to the door, and I regained my composure and I apologized to her. And I told her that I'm sorry that I caught her off guard, and, that I would make sure not to bother her, again. I didn't even try to sell her anything. I was just like, really sorry for that. And I went to the next house and I finished the day, knocking on people's doors. And to Mike's point, there were a few people that day who agreed with what I was pushing. It was phone service at the time. That's where the whole Bell South thing came from. I was knocking on people's doors saying, "Would you like to change to AT&T?" Right? That was my job, right? And some people every day say yes, they would like to change to AT&T. They're mad at Comcast and they'll switch over. You see, so it's law of averages. And you hear these laws of averages, but it's one thing to hear it and like appreciate it. People will say you need to have 2 years worth of runway. I would say prepare for more. You'll hear things like, you're not going to be profitable for 3 years. I say prepare for more. I think patience is a really valuable asset as a founder. And for those who can prudently manage their time, continue perfecting their craft, and again, putting together the right sort of network. It might take a little longer. Maybe it happens for you faster, but I'd say don't discredit the data behind. If they say it's going to take you 300 people before you get 10 that will invest in you, don't fall short. If you've made 80 or 90 phone calls, it's going to take more than that unless there's something extremely unique about what you're doing. And even then, it might still take you 300, firms before you've got the half a percentage that agree to invest in you. You follow?
What's the eBay story?
So when I was a freshman in college, Facebook had just come out, and eBay was kind of this new thing, which was kind of where the entrepreneur bug, I think, kind of took off, because I was seeing these young guys that were doing all sorts of things, and I was like, I'm gonna get in on that. So eBay, I started selling software on eBay that was how to use things. So I would literally like get these, how to use Firefox, how to use Microsoft Explorer, right? Like just how to use things, how to burn a DVD. And I would sell how-to guides, the way that you'd buy like a For Dummies book. I had these how-to guides on common day applications, and I started selling them for like 99 cents, and people were buying them. So I raised the price to $3 to $5. And like I kind of finished up, but like I was selling like how to burn a DVD for $12. This was when Netflix used to mail you a DVD, right? So it's like that long ago, right? And I made so much money in my freshman year. I looked over at my roommate and I said, "Bro, I have a bunch of money from selling software on eBay. Should we buy a pet monkey, or should I buy this motorcycle that I found on eBay?" And we settled on buying the motorcycle because we had just got our hamster like taken out of the out of our dorm because pets weren't allowed. And so I actually bought a motorcycle on eBay, bought a one-way ticket. Mind you, I had never actually driven a motorcycle outside of a dirt bike in Alabama, right? I flew to Ohio, one-way ticket, and took 75 south all the way back to Atlanta. And I called my roommate and said, if I'm not back in 2 days, it means that I died somewhere along 75. Call my parents and let them know like something has gone like horribly wrong. And that was probably one of my like happiest moments in life. I remember the guy I bought the motorcycle from, I didn't really think this through, but I didn't have my own helmet. So I had to take his helmet, but his head was very small and I was very happy. So I put on this really small helmet and I was smiling like the whole drive home. So by the time I got home, like my head, like I had excruciating pain, but I was like extremely happy. And I remember like, taking everybody in the dorm, like around the campus over and over. Is definitely like the highlight of freshman year for sure.
So you went from, you're a concert pianist, then you got involved in nanotechnology. I see you have 2 patents. on what are your patents on, and how did that
Toothbrushes.
help you with the business side of things?
I don't think the patents helped with business. That was, if you have a lot of at bats, my kind of approach is like you can try something and every now and then something will work.
Yeah.
I had this idea for toothbrushes where you could, so I don't know if you guys know this, but you can detect a lot of things from like someone's mouth. So if you stick any sort of, device in your mouth, you can actually find out a lot about the body. And we submitted an SBIR grant to the National Science Foundation with the application of a toothbrush that would measure and tell you preemptively if you were getting sick or if you were going to have diabetes based on what was going on in your mouth. And we actually had in that proposal being able to detect coronaviruses because it's a common thing, and you can tell based on temperature increases and things like this if someone's gonna get sick in a couple of days. This was 2018, 2017, 2018 when we did that. And so, yeah, the patents that we were submitting for were really to kind of defend kind of that idea. And we didn't get the SBIR, but it was an experience. And I think through that experience, I learned a lot about not making individual bets on opportunities. I spent a lot of time and money on that one particular effort. Whereas now I'm much more, like you were touching on earlier, there's a lot of value in diversification, because if something doesn't work out, you don't completely shipwreck the rest of what you're doing.
So, and how, Einstein, what he played the fiddle, or the violin. I think Warren Buffett plays an instrument. How do you think music has helped you in all this? Because I know there's a lot of math in music, and I know you're really good at math. You work the probabilities pretty well, particularly in the investment cycle. How is that, you think? I know this has nothing to do with actually building a customer base, but I think it all does in a way. Everything's connected, right?
Sure. I think music does different things for different people. For me, I think it helped with my memorization. I think it helped with how I spend my free time. I write a lot of songs. For a period of time, I was writing songs for my church every week. I would write a new song for the church. And I actually wanted to be a piano player for most of my life. Like, as you mentioned, I was the youngest student to have a scholarship at Vanderbilt. Their school of music is Blair School of Music. I was taught by their dean of piano. He's actually still there. He must be extremely old, because he was old when he was teaching me. And so before I went to Georgia Tech, I actually wanted to go to Berklee School of Music. I wanted to be a jazz piano player. And my mom was like, absolutely not. There's no way you're going to do that. And so I say that to say, again, for me, music has really been, I saw Oscar Peterson playing jazz when I was going into college. It wasn't something that I was exposed to when I was younger. I was playing classical piano. And the way that he smiled while he was playing Alice in Wonderland. I don't know if you've ever heard this song. And he performed it in Japan the year I was born, 1986. And the way that he smiled as he was playing with his band, I felt that I had never smiled like that, in anything. You romanticize your life, but like I saw him playing and I was like, I want to do that my whole life, And so I told my parents that was what I was supposed to do, because that's the only way I would be happy, And my mom was actually the first African-American on the board at Georgia Tech. So she was like, you're absolutely not going to do that. You're going to go to Georgia Tech and you're not going to embarrass us. And that's kind of what turned me into a lifelong learner. I've enjoyed being able to go to a lot of different places, study a lot of different things. And, since both my parents were teachers, they were, I came from family that were teachers. Their parents were teachers, they were teachers. And I've always enjoyed learning. I've always enjoyed teaching others. That's just how it turned out for me.
So I mean, to run an investment firm, I mean, it's just a lot of time just on making sure your portfolios are successful and all that. How do you manage to do that and then continue to build this this network or this client base to keep your company going? I know you your company is growing. You hire interns from Santa Clara University. We know that.
I should have had them
I don't
join.
know if everybody knows that, but so you're tied to the university that way. And now, now that I'm with the Bronco venture, to be part of that, and as we get into our other programs, you know, you'll help bring, because these are great stories. You know, I'm getting a lot of everybody loves your stories here on chat. So how do you do it? I mean, how do you manage to do that? Build your customer base, increase your network, take care of that little baby you have, all that. What's your how do you do it?
You know, everyone's got a different story and experiences. The experiences that I had is I came from a normal place, you know, and I wanted to make my mom proud. I think a lot of guys kind of live with that their whole life. It's something that I don't like admitting as much as how often I think about, I wonder if this is going to make my mom proud. Hey mom, I got this thing, you know, it's always, hey mom, I got this thing, you know? And that was because she was my role model. You know, I saw her start her business when I was a freshman in high school, and I ran her QuickBooks out of the garage, you know, and she does Department of Defense contracting. And she you know, she left a really good job. She was vice president of a HBCU, and she kind of started from nothing, a Black female in the environment, Department of Defense. You know, there just wasn't a lot of her out there, you know, and to see her kind of persevere and to work as hard as she did, I always wanted to, you know, say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing also. In terms of how, I think one thing that I'm thankful for is that for most of my life, I've only worked for myself, you know, so I never had the luxury of every 2 weeks I'm going to receive a salary or something like that. But also I've worked in industries that are passive income oriented, you know, so I'm still compensated for investment decisions that I help people do when I was 21, 22 years old. You know, a teacher, what my parents came from, they're not able to do that. They have to go to work every single day in order to receive a paycheck every single month, sort of deal. So I was fortunate in that I started in a space at a very young age where even if I wasn't necessarily extremely good at it, anybody who I helped, as long as, you know, I continue to help them, I've been able to slowly but surely, you know, build up a book of business. In terms of portfolio wise, it's efficiency. You know, I only run one portfolio. So when we speak with folks, we make it very clear, like, this isn't the sort of, you know, you do some sort of risk questionnaire, we're going to give you conservative, moderate, aggressive type deal. You know, we have one portfolio. We tell people that it's concentrated positions. It's not necessarily correlated to the market at all times. But we're looking for companies that we believe to be undervalued, that are going to outperform their peer group over long periods of time. So we're not worried about the short-term, mid-term type stuff. We're looking to make companies, invest in companies that through the lens of history are going to outperform. And to do that with conviction, the advice I would have is just becoming a subject matter expert at one thing over time. You know, so for all the startups that are here, you've got an idea, you might get some funding, that sort of deal. But you can become an expert over time, continue becoming an expert over time, so that for that one thing that you're doing, people will start seeing you as, you know, where there's no one else who I know who really knows as much about renewable energy, or who really knows as much about geothermal, or as much about, you know, community solar. And so what we've done is, you know, for myself and for each of my advisors, I say, look, find something you really enjoy and get better at that than everyone else. Don't worry about anything else. And once you do that, people will start coming to you, because there aren't that many subject matter experts at very specific things that work in an environment where they can give you something that's in your best interest. Because if I worked for a Vanguard or a Fidelity or a Merrill Lynch, I would have to give you whatever their product lineup was. Whereas at Bay Street, we're registered with the SEC. We don't have to recommend anything. We recommend what we believe to be is in the best interest of our clients. So it's a very transparent relationship, and it gives me a level of freedom as I come to conclusions and as I build my confidence in a sector and in a space, to where, you know, I can confidently say with conviction, this is the direction that we're going. You follow. So before the infrastructure bill, you know, before change in legislation, before Tesla went through the moon, we were already invested in those sectors. You know, we had conviction that that was the direction that the space was going to go. And for now, we've been okay. You see.
Okay is pretty an understatement. I mean, that fund of yours, what was its growth rate over the last year or something? I mean, I know you exceeded the SAP.
Yeah.
What was it? Did it double? I think. I mean, what's your growth?
Yeah, we've been fortunate.
You don't have to be humble here.
Yeah.
I mean, and because I want to ask a follow-up question after you tell me that, and that, you know.
Yeah. So we returned 84% last year, and we now have 86 million in assets. The 86 million in assets might sound like a lot, but it's actually very small in the grand scheme of investment managers. But still, it's been a good trip. But I don't think that either one of those would have happened again without the beginning of the conversation we had, which was working with people like yourself who advocate for someone who's performing well. You know, you can have the best thing in the world, but if no one wants to talk to you and nobody wants to help you or endorse you or, you know, encourage others to take a look at you, you're stuck before you get started. You see.
Well, so how do you now? What's your plan on? I mean, it's a damn good return. Getting the word out, and what's your strategy on continuing to build Bay Street? Are you going to diversify in other funds? You're just going to stick in renewables, or what's your plan? I mean, how do you? And then when you have that plan, how does the world know about you? How do you make the world know?
So because of my call center background, a lot of our marketing is managed by outsourced team members, right? So they are doing very specific tasks, almost like an assembly line, almost like we have someone on the team that only makes digital content, and then another person on the team that's only doing like the written content that's going to go along with that digital content, and then another person on the team. We actually have 4 people on our team who don't do anything except for comment on LinkedIn all day. So they log into our advisors' profiles, and all they do is comment on our target list of clients that we'd like to have, right? So not ever asking for a sale, not ever asking for a meeting, just commenting. Every time that person says something, one of our advisors is going to say, "I agree, great post," you know, something along these lines. And so what that provides is, over time, it's not something that happens overnight, but over time, people start to feel like they know you, right? Like if I'm always commenting on something you say, even if we've never spoken, we've never talked, like, oh yeah, this guy is always commenting on my stuff, right? And when that happens, you start to have people that reach out and they will say, "Hey, I saw the post that you made on solar, you know, well, we'd like to know if you'd like to help with fill in the blank," you see. And that's kind of the approach that we've taken. I think the same for telemarketing. You know, we make a lot of pointed phone calls to very specific demographics, and it's law of averages. Like you don't expect, you know, anyone to get an appointment with every single person they call, but if someone makes 125 phone calls a day, they're going to get 1 or 2 people a day that agree to a meeting. Those 1 or 2 people are going to be very primed for the conversation because they've already had an initial phone call with someone and said that they do want to talk about what it is that you're offering. And then the other thing I'll say is just be yourself. So like, for example, I'm a big reader. So on our website, we have a section called What We're Reading. And I have a book club and anybody can sign up for it, right? And someone went to the page, Edelman, the world's largest PR firm. They scheduled a meeting, and in the meeting scheduler, they said, "We went to your book club page. We saw that you're reading The Color of Money, and we just had the author speak to our organization. We're really looking forward to this conversation with you." And you think about that, you're like, who would have known when I put like the books that I'm reading? Like it literally says like, I'm reading this book in the month of April. And then they scheduled a meeting like, oh, we just met with this lady last week. We're really excited to talk to you. And there's no way that would have happened if I was trying to build a firm that looked, like everyone else's, I will say. And the other thing about being yourself, so you mentioned the interns at Santa Clara. What I have them do is our podcast. And the reason we settled on that was because I felt that women that were entering finance, one, they're underpaid. Two, they're under-resourced as it pertains to networking, because for good reason, I don't know if it's good reason, but there's an issue with, it's not for good reason, actually, now that I think about it, with so many men in higher positions, it's difficult for them to get mentored and move up, And so what we have them do with our podcast is interview successful women that are further along in their career. The series, the podcast that we came up with is called How Did You Do It and Why Should I Care? And we have at least 5 to 7 women every single day schedule a session to record their story, just to share their story. And you'd be amazed, Mike and everyone else, how many women we asked to interview, and their initial response is, I don't feel that I'm actually successful. I'm not Oprah. I'm just doing my thing. And when we respond and say, yeah, but you're a subject matter expert, you've got a career, you've got a family, you're in a happy marriage, you've actually accomplished a lot more than most people give you credit for. Don't let someone tell you that because you're not, the CEO of Walmart, that you don't have a story that can encourage another female future leader, right? And so I think that's a great use of an intern's time, because something I saw when I was 19 and 20 is I didn't know anyone, right? I literally didn't know anyone. I didn't know what I was doing. And had I had taken a year or two to be able to meet 4 or 5 other successful people, help them with their brand, help them further their career by sharing that across our network of listeners, and then also be able to reach back out 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now and say, hey, remember when we did that podcast together? I feel that it's helping them really build a network, again, without having to reach out and immediately ask for something. You're actually giving the person that you're speaking to something that's valuable to them. All they have to commit to is a 30-minute session, and they get to speak about themselves and how they got to where they are. And so I think those are 2 things that I really like that we've done so far. Period.
I can continue to ask, but I think there might be other people in the audience here that would love to have questions or anything. I mean, there's 41 people on this call right now, so I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I see Gavin, you've got a question.
Yeah. Hi, Will. How you doing? So my company, we wanted to initially help expand, similar to what you did, with investment literacy with minorities, especially with investing in like stocks, because I was in Philadelphia at the time when I first started it, and I realized that the discrepancy between major financial institutions and like education with how to start even investing in stocks and simple things like starting a 401k has really like affected the millennial generation, especially after the internet bubble crash. And so we've been struggling with being able to try to figure out how to like enter that market, right? Because all of a sudden there's not really a lot of like resources out there for them to begin with. But at the end of the day, it's not easy to just automatically try to educate. So I was wondering, how did you figure out like proper ways to like little by little start getting yourself in the market? because even though there's a demand, sometimes the demand is not reflective just yet. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Are you saying that your startup, you're going to create the content for financial literacy, or is it a platform where they also invest and then you're providing financial literacy? Can you explain a little bit more about it?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, we wanted to first start with giving everyone access to machine learning algorithm tools, right? But just really trying to get everyone dipping their toes in the water with like investing in anything. So like understanding how to invest in stocks and understanding the importance of investing in a 401k. So we were going to start doing that by providing blogs and writing about it, but that doesn't necessarily help us attract the market that we really wanted to attract, especially in the beginning, because most of the people that we were getting traction from were people who were already in the industry, right? And a lot of the survey members, especially students who got back to us, they were women. And a lot of women, a lot of minorities, they're surprisingly not in the market. And so we wanted to figure out a proper way of really going and marketing to them, but without making it seem like we're taking advantage of them at the same time. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I think the men and women being in the market thing is just how the decisions are made, you know. In terms of some thoughts, going back to the subject matter expertise thing, I'll share my screen if I can. Yeah, okay, cool. And so what we do is we create a lot of content, right? And so one of the things that we do is a workshop for women in investing. Um, and this workshop is only for the women in the workplace. In terms of how you can build your brand, who you should be reaching out to, I would recommend that you reach out to ERGs, employee resource groups, because they're always looking for something to have their employees participate in. You can offer to do a lunch and learn, something like that. And then from there, you know, kind of land and expand your business to the rest of the organization. Now, what we've done with this is we actually reached out to a lady, Jean Chatsky. She also went to Wharton. She wrote a book called Power of the Purse. And we took her book and we said, hey, we want to distill that into a 1-hour workshop so that people who have not heard of your book can apply practically what you're speaking to into their current situation. And just like you said, you know, the first couple of things we touch on is behavioral finance. From there, we talk about managing their money. That's the type of account. So you said, hey, how to understand your 401k, how to understand your IRA. Should you have a SEP as a business owner? You know, should you have an HSA or an FSA? Mm-hmm. Should you have a Coverdell account, or should you have an UGMA, or should you have a 529? All those depend on a lot of different variables that most people aren't necessarily immediately aware to. Mm-hmm. Then as a caregiver, women are statistically going to be the ones that take care of aging parents. So we point out how much they're going to lose in terms of salary, how that's going to affect their Social Security versus how much would it cost to get help. And then raising kids who launch, you see, so if you've got children, and then the last part is the joys of spending. And so I would say when you create content like this and you do those lunch and learns, you know, in a very methodical, you know, concise manner, you start building a reputation in the space. And nobody else has this workshop. You see what I mean? Nobody's really kind of positioning it the way that we've positioned it. And we have these same workshops for first time, you know, Black at Facebook, Latinx at Facebook, women in investing. You see, so it doesn't necessarily matter the people group that you're looking to support, but each of those people groups have a different situation and they have a different story. There's a different cause for kind of what's going on underlying why they're not participating in the market, you know.
Because like my co-founder is he's also African American, and I'm a first generation student. And one of the things that we don't want to do with our marketing, like I love what you're doing, especially with the workshop, but we struggle with marketing in the sense that we don't want to be promoting like, oh, we have now a Black person here, that we don't want to make it seem like we're having like they're like a subject of our survey. Does that make sense? And that's one of the things that we wanted to we wanted to be able to like try to figure out a marketing strategy where it's like, we're genuinely trying to help these people without making it seem like we're only focusing on the demographic part of the marketing side, you know?
Yeah, let me have your email, bro. I'm gonna send you a it's an investor survey that Ariel just put out. Ariel's John Rogers' company, Ariel
Mhm.
Investments, is a super successful Black-owned firm in Chicago. He did a report with Charles Schwab on just the person of color investment landscape. My initial response would be, if you have data, you don't have to feel like you have a gimmick. You know, I mean, data
Yeah.
speaks for itself, and if you're genuine about who you're trying to help, people that will come off. You know, I don't think that you need to so much worry about how it will be perceived. I think that
Mhm.
you can craft and improve, and you can always make your messaging a little tighter.
Okay.
But focus on the data, because again, when you're the subject matter expert, people, they know that you're trying to help them. If you know, if I'm doing a workshop for women in investing, they know, like, I don't gain anything by doing the workshop for them. Like, it's information for you. I'm not female. You see what I mean?
Very true.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to be in the situation you're in, but I can help you so that you understand what should you do when your parents pass and you inherit your first time. What should you do the second time when your spouse passes? You know, there's a lot of things that I think people will appreciate, as opposed to kind of become skeptics if they see that you've done your homework. You follow.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gavin, for the question. Do we have any other questions out there? I'm sure we must. I'm getting a lot of. So I'm going to give 5 seconds, and then I'm going to ask a question.
Pedro
Pedro's got a
Garcia
question.
has his hand
Oh, wait a
up.
minute. Okay, yeah, thank you. Pedro.
You're on mute, bro.
Sorry about that. I was just wanted to thank you for all of this, so much wealth of information in such a short period of time. And since we're on the call, I wanted to invite you to be a guest speaker on the Grow with Google, because you're mentioning Black and Latinx marketing. We do a lot of these workshops for free for, and we're hosting like the different speakers, like from the Responsible Business Lending Coalition, Oakland Chamber of Commerce, and we're trying to bring in different local entrepreneurs and speakers. And what you said was just such a wealth of information. I know. So guys, wanted to thank you.
Thanks, bro. I just spoke with Google yesterday, Cassandra and Stephanie, they're both in DEI there. So would be glad to work with you, bro. I appreciate the nod.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? So, so Santa Clara is a Jesuit institution, and they treat they focus a lot on business and ethics. I think it's, what is it, doing well by doing good. And I know you you know, you're a spiritual guy. You go to church and you like music and all that kind of stuff. What's your take on the ethics of business? How do you kind of weave that into what you do, and your philosophy on that, since we are at Santa Clara?
Yeah, I think regardless of someone's religious background, something I'm thankful for is, you know, my grandfather was in World War II. And I asked him when I was very young, how come it seems like, you know, as an American Christian, there's this perception that I had that, well, people in China don't know Christianity. So like, what happens to them, right? Because there's this very like I said, I'm from Alabama. So it's a very it's an interesting sort of ritualistic thing that you can fall into, just cultural Christianity, you know. And I think it's a lot different than having a relationship with God that is yours and can't be taken from you. You see, and so, you know, in Romans it says that you know, we're going to be judged by our conscience. So whether you read the Bible or you believe Christianity or something like that, everyone is given a conscience. And on Judgment Day, those who know the law, Christians, will be judged by the law. And those who did not have the law were given their conscience. So from an ethics standpoint, I think that's important. You know, again, I've owned my business for a very long time. I started when I was very young, and I do have decisions that I made when I was younger that I regret making, because I was so consumed with this idea of, you know, growing sort of deal. And they're not, you know, it's not like any sort of like major criminal activity or anything like that. It was just like compromise. And something that I really think is important as a business owner and as an individual is to live a life free of compromise. You know, the second that you come into yourself and you say that, you know, this is what I stand for, and these are the things that are my values, and I'm not going to compromise what's important to me. I'm really of the opinion that the people that are meant to be around you and the experience that you're meant to have will be one that you are satisfied with, you know. Else, I think you're gonna always have moving targets. You know, it's as if you could move a field goal around. When I was in college, if I just had $1,000, I'd be like, oh, I'm so rich. You know, when I got my first job, if I only had $100,000, then I'd be so rich, you know. Then if I could only save $1 million. And so you keep moving the field goal every time you do something, as opposed to, you know, if you're wealthy, you can, with your time, you know, you have time to do what you want. If you want to do something, you can do it. If you don't want to do it. And something I'm thankful for, the first 10 years of my business, I was always in this like grow. And the last 5 years, I've really entered this life of rest. And that was because I stopped pursuing everything else. I said, hey, you know, if I seek the Lord with my whole heart, he promised that everything else will be added to me. And I'd heard that my whole life. Like I said, whether you believe it or not, that's what I had heard. And I decided to apply that and ask for help. Hey, you promised me if I do this, then everything else will work out. And that's been my experience. You know, I can't speak for everyone else's. But what I will say is that I've seen it to be true, you know, in my life, that if I honor God, he honors me. And it's a relationship that I'm thankful to be in. You know, I'm thankful for the rest that I have. I'm not stressed out on a day-to-day basis if the market's going like this, because I've got peace. You know, I know that what's meant for me will work out, and I don't have to compare. Kind of like this Black Lives Matter thing. I think that's super important. A lot of people are reaching out. Hey, what do you think about this Black Lives Matter? How do you feel? What do you think about white males that get all the jobs, yada, yada, yada? What do you think about privilege? Well, I could live my life worried about the privilege that other people have if I was always comparing myself to others. But I have privilege too. You know, I'm the son of God, and that's a title that supersedes any sort of privilege that someone else might have, it because they didn't get to pick their skin color either. You know, so I would say that's all I got for you, Mike.
You know, I'm a bully, and we try some of the messages that we try to give to the members of our programs, whether it's the BBA cohort or prep school or even idea school, is that you know, every business has a culture, and the way I see how you define culture is your values. So the question is then how, you know, are your values, are they incorporated in your business, and are those values articulated so when people join you and become part of Bay Street, they're part of that culture? I'm not saying, you know, you have to be super religious or anything like that, but are there certain tenets that you expect from your team, from your company, from the members of Bay Street, that they all kind of like are in step? They're singing out of the same sheet of music.
I feel you. You know, so because I am vocally Christian about my faith, a lot of people assume like everybody who works with me must be. But that's not the case. I mean, we have LGBTQ members on our team. that surprises a lot of people since I am Christian and my profile is pretty cool. You know, if you Google me, you see all the Christian songs that I write. But again, I think that it's a mistake for us to fall into these like cultural patterns, you know, because Jesus himself, when he was hanging out with people, you know, the church people were saying, why are you spending time with them? You know, my responsibility isn't to change someone's opinion, it's to show them the light of Christ, you know. So if someone's interviewing with me, my hope is that any bias that I could run into because I don't know their story, I can push to the side and see how can the person that's interacting and working with me. I started this out by saying not all relationships have to be permanent, right? So while we're walking together, how can this person see the light of Christ, to your point, without me giving them a Bible or saying, here, listen to this song I wrote or something like that. They should just be able to come across from me and say there was something different about the conversation, the relationship that I had with him. He didn't immediately judge me. Like a lot of people, especially that I found in the LGBTQ space, it comes out in background checks, you know, and so it can be kind of awkward, I think, because they're so used to it being perceived a certain way, to where you make a phone call and say, hey, this is kind of weird. Like I got this thing and there's this name here and then there's this thing here, but I don't really like, is this wrong or something like that? And so, yeah, I mean, that's my answer. I don't really tell people what to do or that they can't work or something like that, or whatever. I just hope that they see by example. And I hope that by interacting with me, that they can continue to live to their full potential. You see, I mean.
Yeah. I better see if Morgan has any closing comments, or Pam or Alexi, before. I know you got another meeting you got to go to, so I'm being cognizant of your time.
Powerful.
Yeah, Morgan.
William, this was remarkable. I really appreciate the depth of thought you put into all of your answers. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's one of the most memorable sessions we've had. And I can tell that our founders agree from all the comments they posted. It's probably the most comments we've gotten in a session prep school so far. So thank you so much for joining us. And Mike, great job with the interview. I'm going to have you book all of our guests from now on.
Gee, thanks. Alexi, how about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so just super insightful, deeply philosophical. I mean, resonated very deeply with me. Thank you so much, Will. It's been a tremendous value, I think, to everyone here. So, yeah, we welcome you back anytime.
Pam?
Yeah, ditto. I think that the biggest takeaway for me is your such clear authenticity. And I think that if half of our founders can muster expressing half the authenticity that you've demonstrated, they're not going to have any problem getting customers and investors and co-founders, team members, employees, etc. Because to me, that's the key, is just really being authentic, and you've demonstrated it so crystal clearly. Thank you.
All right. Well, I know you got another meeting, and so I'm gonna respect that, and I'll let Pam take over as she breaks us up into our breakout groups.
I do just want to add, roll tide. I went to UAH.
Hey, you know,
University of
Mike hates
Alabama,
that.
Huntsville.
Yeah, Mike's the LSU guy, so
Yeah.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's cool. I live down the street from UAH. My mom was vice president at Alabama A&M, which is also down the street.
Oh, wow. All right.
Cool.
Well, we'll have to talk more.
For sure,
And
yeah.
we'll have you back and have coffee and tea and wine and whatever.
Sure.
But we can't wait to see you in person.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks, guys, for listening. Feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. I'll put my cell phone number. I'm big on WhatsApp and Signal and all that. If you've got like general questions or any introductions that I can help you guys with, just let me know. And I would love to support everything that everyone's doing. Oh, sorry, it didn't go to everyone. Let me click on.
That's okay.
I don't send a message to all. Oh, everyone. Okay.
All right, great. And any other resources that you want to send our way, we have a shared folder that we put all of our resources into.
Cool. I'll email that report for the gentleman that asked earlier to Mike.
That'd be
and Mike,
great.
if you can forward that along.
All right.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.